Welcome to the Fieldlab podcast. We know that you're all here because you're passionate about health, learning about true health. Maybe it's keeping your health, maybe it's finding your health, maybe it's helping someone else with their health. We all have different reasons why we're here. If you run a human day connected to a really good environment that's filled with light, water, magnetism, that's filled with love and community, that is how humans default to health. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Fieldlab podcast or vodcast. Whatever you want to call it. We are just playing with this format in hopes of having more conversations of us in the field, something a little more friendly, something a little more relevant and flexible to now, but maybe also a little more shareable, especially if you've been in the journey with us or maybe new to us, to keep your mind constantly going back to now and trying to apply what you're learning with us to either maybe your own health issues or those around you or a coworker, because we really value the knowledge, but also the wisdom of putting this knowledge into knowing and into practice. So we're just going to possibly call it, we're not 100% sure, but we do know this. We are Fieldlab. So this is the Fieldlab podcast, but these will be conversations between mostly Noah and I in the field.
So that's what we're going to go with, I guess.
Yeah, so we're going to start with that. And then the goal of today, though, is for us to tell you a bit about Fieldlab and really what Fieldlab is about. Also, who we created Fieldlab for, so you can understand potentially where we fit in your journey. And maybe it's listening to podcasts to start.
Yeah, start there.
Possibly just that. Maybe it's a DIY experience at our forum. Maybe it's a deeper experience with our learning. Or maybe it's a one-on-one with either myself or Noah.
Yeah.
We are trying to create an opportunity for learning and support in whatever way people need.
Yeah, people need it. Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah. So, Noah, you guide us
Okay.
so we can keep our conversation on track.
Perfect. So I think we should start with Fieldlab's origins, kind of where it began, and then what were those first initial years like, and the transformation that happened that kind of brought it to where it is today.
Right. Fieldlab was birthed from a idea around supporting health conscious, active people. So this was created at the time that I personally was very invested in CrossFit, and I co-started in a partnership, a local CrossFit gym, which everyone knows. You and Michaela and everyone in with the Avena, Cindy and Joe and my husband, we were all in.
Yeah, that's how we met,
Yes.
obviously.
So I started CrossFit, the local CrossFit, with some partners and became, very invested in it. Loved the CrossFit community, and I think we all can definitely say that was the major part of I think what we loved about CrossFit. You only see that now kind of looking back, but the original goal, because once I started CrossFit, I'd already been in my medical practice for 10 years, just over 10 years, and it was sort of a natural partnership of, well, not that I intended that, but a lot of the members then were health interested. So I think I did a lot of like seminars.
Yeah, it's crossover.
It was just like a lot of crossover. And then, there were some people coming in doing visits, and I thought I saw clearly, like, okay, people generally in that space are very health interested, but don't know where to go for health information. So Field Lab was initially the idea around education. That was lab and field. At the time, it was the more broad conception of your life is your field, but like the field of the game, like also like there was a little bit of a sporting vibe in there too, but very like broad. I loved when we landed at Field Lab. It was a couple different names before Field Lab. I started with Gem Nutrients.
That was
From
taken,
Gemma.
right?
Well, it wasn't.
Oh,
And then because it took a while to like really nail down the concept, I was working with a marketing team. And by the time we got to the name, it had just been launched, a company called Gem. I forgot what it was called.
yeah, I don't remember.
It was like a gem,
I remember
an
talking about
edible multivitamin chew.
Okay.
I actually think it still exists. Like clearly they had more money than I had, because that was obvious though to them who I was working with, that we couldn't keep that name. So then we had come up with other names, um, because it was very CrossFit oriented. It was other interestingly, like, things like other 23 came up. Like it was like the other 23 hours in the day that mattered, not just your hour in the gym. But then that was like Michael Jordan, and then that had all these infringement copy. It was like
Yeah,
crazy.
too complicated.
We came up with against a lot of ideas that we tried, and then when like the lawyer looked it up, it was already taken. And then Field Lab was one of the pitched ideas, and immediately, like that was the first name that had an educational piece to it. That it was the lab part, which I think I had mentioned in one of our powwows around like the experience of a lab was something I enjoyed as a student. Like I loved when I took chemistry, I loved the lab part because that's how I really took that knowledge and it became knowing. So that was sort of what happened there, and that stuck. I think that Field Lab didn't come until like the third iteration.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
so
So it took some time, but then,
Interesting.
that was the process of deciding. The marketing team that I had was basically trying to push toward product because they were like, how are you going to sell education if you don't have an audience? And I had no audience. The story. I like no social media and just didn't really have time or really interest around that. So it then became two products. It became purposeful supplementation for kind of a multivitamin support. It was mitochondrial focus. So, the mitochondria, like, it goes far back, so that was the one main product. And then there was a second product, which was focused on the health of the physical body, recovery, especially being an athletic baseline. So then my marketing team loved that, and everything became about the products and the labels and all of that. And I can definitely say, looking back, like I knew that that wasn't where I had the interest, but I was following the lead that would land me to a place where the products were the gateway to the information.
Yeah, I remember your thought always being like, how do we get to the point where it's mostly education?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then that just took way longer than it probably should have. I think I dragged my feet quite a bit on it because I knew it wasn't fully what I wanted it to be. But then there was a moment where it's like, okay, you got to just launch something.
Yeah.
You have to launch something so you can actually do it, and whatever that looks like. So we launched. I think the story is this: like you had kind of been journeying along with me, like proofreading, giving me feedback for like the year before, and then when it came to launch, you joined my team. Um, Leaving your world of insurance, very opposite of what we were doing, but you were already the coach at CrossFit and invested in that. And so,
Made sense.
yeah, it made sense. And we had lined up the whole year of doing events. This was February 2020. And then we got to our first event. So yeah, the Fieldlab was launched days before our first event. It was sort of the moment of like, well, we need something here, so we're just
put
going
it
to do
out
this.
there.
So we put it out there. We launched at a CrossFit event, Waterpalooza in Miami.
Yeah.
It was totally in line with how we were thinking already. Like it was outside. We had a view of the sunrise. Like interestingly, going back, there were some things I sometimes forget when I learned what I've learned, but that like fit the bill.
Yeah,
Other than we were like under a Wi-Fi router. Do you remember that?
I do.
And they were like, great. We're just gonna go step in the grass and put our feet in the water and hope for the best. But anyway, I digress. But that was our first event. It was pretty cool though. Like
it was great to
we interacted with, I mean, gosh, there were so many CrossFitters there, tons of health interested people. I can say that for sure. We had a lot of really amazing conversations.
Yeah, so much feedback.
So much feedback, but it didn't really yield us very many customers.
Not initially.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a lot of great conversations, but I actually think people were generally resonating more with what we were talking about around health.
Right.
But then we didn't really have that to support people with.
Yeah, I don't think people understood where it fit into their
life
needs.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of trying to simplify their existence with just 2 supplements.
Right.
Whereas the CrossFitters were looking for more and more and more. So I think people just didn't know where to put it.
Yeah. And then I think for us, like we didn't know where we fit either.
Yeah. We were kind of like just
looking, figuring out. And then we came back from that event. It was certainly like really fueling, and we learned a lot and made some, interesting connections there. And then like the next week, then was the swirl around. It was already swirling. Yeah, I was already starting, but then it was like the world's going to close down, and we had our next event scheduled in California.
Yeah, we should say this was 2020, February 2020, right?
Yeah, it was just then before the world shut down, and we had our next event planned. We had gained a couple of customers, and we were trying to, figure out the flow of Fieldlab. I was still working in the office and seeing patients one-on-one. But then basically the week before our next event, that's when everything started being the conversation of this is not going to happen. You can't travel. Like it was the craziest time. Like I still look back and think, did that really happen? And then we didn't initially cancel it because we were like, okay, if this is happening, we're gonna go. But then I think it was like, I don't know, 3 days beforehand. Then
it's pretty close.
Yeah, they canceled the event.
It was
like it was that was the weirdest moment where no one could make a decision, and then I should say, maybe I'm sure the world had already made the decision that was gonna happen, but no one knew it was gonna happen, and we then couldn't go. Yeah, so then the event got canceled. Everything got canceled, and along with that, then we tried to figure out
how do you get it out to people?
Yeah, what does this mean for us? Like our whole thing was about teaching through experience and conversation, and not via social media, because we wanted it to be genuine, authentic, and then that all got taken away.
Right. Yeah. Had to shift the strategy.
Yeah, because then the other events we had scheduled got canceled. Like nothing happened that year. And with that, Fieldlab kind of that initial concept of Fieldlab died as quickly as it
took a pause.
Got birthed.
Yeah.
Yeah. In maybe a rightful way.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of rolled along with the concept really quietly, but obviously knew that no one can learn about Fieldlab if there's no interface. And then, I was pretty certain, and thankfully you are anti-social media, that like we were just not going to do that. So we then kind of pivoted. I think you then ended up getting your health coach certification,
right?
Because then we realized that maybe actually it would be more powerful if you started working with patients too, to actually gain more knowledge and insight for yourself.
Yeah, which was
actually really helpful and valuable. I don't know who knows if that would have happened, but it made the most sense, especially around my medical practice, where I could see that, the post-pandemic, my my internal doctoring network was shifting as well. So I was more interested in becoming small again. And we had sort of agreed that then you would follow the role of overflow for me, and I could eventually phase out the doctors in my practice.
Yeah.
So that took some time. Thankfully,
sure.
the pandemic
That's
was not
fine.
short though.
Yeah.
So we kind of really took and used that time so wisely.
Yeah, just very
Yep.
purposefully to build something.
And then you did that. That took a little bit to do the health certification. Then you plugged into working with patients. And I don't know when we actually officially tabled Field Lab.
I
Yeah,
don't know, it's a good question.
we
I
were
think there was a
at least the original
conversation.
Field Lab.
Yeah,
Yes.
to kinda
Yeah.
try to pivot a little bit.
I can't remember that. So, gosh, a lot of time has passed, but there was a point where it was really clear that that path was absolutely no longer, and there was no fixing it. I think that was the initial thought. I was like, "Oh, we can just, like, bend a little bit and fix it." Um, yeah,
I think it was the
clearly.
it was like,
Yeah.
back maybe we would be doing people no good whatsoever.
Yes, and then that's, I think, what happened was that we realized that if you tie people to these, now we see it as like these centralized ideas around, like, health can be provided to you through a pill.
Right.
Like, you don't need to take personal responsibility. It will be here it is, and you'll be fine. That just was no longer how we saw it. And I don't know, I didn't initially see it that way either. But once I saw it and realized that's what that was attracting, then it had to kind of go
Yeah,
into
we couldn't unsee that.
its grave.
Yeah.
So we actually stopped Field Lab, um, and then put it into dormancy, and then really rethought of it. And I mean, it took a little while, mostly because we were so busy doing everything at the time. I was like selling the gym, and gosh, I look back and think all of that was just stealing a lot of time to then get to the point of, a few years ago, basically. We're talking about a couple of years where then it was putting, because throughout all this time, then I'm learning biophysics, you're learning biophysics. I'm sort of feeding you the biophysics. Like, we have patients, then now I'm running biophysics thinking through the lens, and then you're following up on them. So it was a lot of time learning, mostly because paired with this was the knowledge that I started having, was that the reason why everything was getting hung up was because it was only based in biochemistry.
Right.
And that was the failure point, that once I learned that health was more than biochemistry, then it was really growing that knowledge. So from truly 2020, and now a continuous journey, it was about first learning the biophysics, then applying it personally, and then applying it with patients. And then kind of last year, putting it a little more into a public space. I, was doing some weekly podcast, and then did the health retreat at Canyon Ranch. And then that was basically the time where we were growing what we thought Field Lab was. And it was after the retreat that it was very obvious that Field Lab had to come out of dormancy. But we had evolved our thinking around what it was. So we kind of relaunched it as something completely different.
Yeah, which is what it's become now.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is what it's become now.
Yeah.
I hope that's a good story.
Yeah, that's our origin story.
Yeah,
Which is
of
pretty
Field Lab.
cool. I mean, it kind of shows you how much can change, and if you're willing to kind of change and
And
be
accept,
adaptable.
I say, accept failure. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it's okay.
really look back and I think, man, I spent so much money on Field Lab, myfieldlab.com. I mean, it's awful. It's like, it's awful that that is what it sometimes takes.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a big.
But it was a lot of time, it was a lot of work, it was a lot of thinking. But that was so fruitful.
I don't think it could have gone.
No, yeah. So isn't that always the
went
story? It's like
perfect.
you've got to have a failure point to drive you to change.
Yeah, to be adaptable and flexible.
Yes.
And
But I was glad that, nothing was forced either. Took a long time to go from 2020 to
Yeah.
2026. Like, it was, it's a long dormant period,
Right.
but that's because initially, and I thought it needed to morph, but then I realized you can't morph something that is innately built on a centralized methodology.
Yeah, when you're trying to
Yeah.
decentralize
Yes.
your
So
entire life.
so then it was the reemergence of Fieldlab was through a decentralized lens of thinking. Thankfully, though, I think we got a little bit not forced into launching it before it maybe was fully ready. But then I don't know. I think it was
It was
ready.
kind of perfect.
It was ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would have done it sooner, but then I was kind of playing with doing those weekly podcasts in kind of this format around like health conversations. It was so much fun and interesting, and we got really good feedback.
Mhm.
And then it got people more interested in what we were doing. And then we launched Field Lab, and now we've been figuring that out.
Yeah. So can you tell us what is Fieldlab now? What
Yeah.
has it become?
So Field Lab in its main space, is a private learning community, a network, a learning network, and it exists in a digital space, but it is representative of our work and what we've done to provide this educational platform within community.
Mhm.
So technically, Field Lab in its true sense is this learning community that you can join, and that we have several levels of membership. The goal is always to keep a free portion of that membership, hopefully to get people interested to then join our paid membership, which is where our work is really going into a space.
Mhm.
So this is monthly Q&As that are live, but also that questions can be submitted around. And over the course of that month, we're driving thinking and critical thinking and learning around blogs. So there's written format, there's video post, there's forums, there's just constant flow of information that then is applied to hopefully one's personal context.
Right.
And then we're pulling that together and kind of keeping
Mhm.
in a really genuine interaction with real people.
True. Yeah.
The goal is not to have likes or followers or
This is
bots.
social
Like,
media.
this is not social media based on purpose, which is unfamiliar. I think it's always the story. Everything
So
everything I do is unfamiliar and
it's a little cutting
confusing.
edge.
Maybe it's cutting edge, it's maybe more future thinking, but it's mostly because we can see that there's a real challenge around how do you find good information? How do you also get information that then you're taking, but ultimately you're doing the work around learning it, knowing it,
Mhm.
putting it into action so that you're decentralized to it,
Mhm.
and that it isn't like you're attached to me or you,
Right.
that we're helping you to have health confidence to run your own health.
Mhm.
So that's what we'll talk a little more about like who Field Lab's for, but like that's Field Lab in its main space. But then Field Lab is also part experience.
Sure. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
We should
so
talk about
so
that.
the goal of Field Lab was information. Well, it was originally product information and experience. That was
Right.
kind of our initial launch, and then it's really become information
Mhm.
and experience, like through community.
Community, for sure.
Which I know that was always the part, because we valued it so much from the
Mhm.
CrossFit sense. Like, I know we feel very, very strongly about community, but for us, it's more about a decentralized community,
Yeah.
that you're learning in community, not because you have to be friends with everybody,
Right.
but mostly because when you learn in community, there's this decentralizing flow that allows you to think better.
Yeah.
That, you're only as good as your weakest link. And sometimes actually a conversation with somebody can push you to think better,
Mhm.
think differently. And that's the purpose of the experiences. Ultimately, our experiences are purposely small.
Mm-hmm.
Small because you have to manage how many relationships are happening in those events. That's some of our our guided thinking around some old thinkers that did a lot of events in community,
Mm-hmm.
and that
It's like the qualitative versus quantitative.
yes,
You want more quality interactions versus just a mass volume of
yes,
interaction.
because once there's too many relationships, it becomes unmanageable from the sense of a network, because unless every person has this deepest sense of thinking,
Mhm.
of having this level of knowledge, then it just becomes chaotic.
Yeah, there's no order.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yes. So we really wanted to create these experiences that were like going into the lab,
Mm-hmm.
that were like going into the lab. And maybe it was also like, going on a field trip
Mm-hmm.
where you could go learn through that experience and have fun, be in a small group and learn by doing and learn through others and actually have fun doing it as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
So it's what it's all about,
Yeah.
So for us, it is keeping at the core of connection to the knowledge, but hopefully then interacting with everybody in real life
Mhm.
through experience, through either coming to something we might have here in the US or through our kind of second home, which is El Salvador, and growing that as well.
Mhm.
So then that's kind of where we are now, is that Fieldlab is a membership community that one could join. That's a monthly membership, and trying to keep that as a reasonable opportunity for someone to find out health information, and then growing out potentials and opportunities for field trips. What we've done so far are some winter field trips. We're going to do a summer field trip, and then doing field trips that are more camp style
Yeah.
in El Salvador.
Mhm.
So that way you can learn about health through experience.
Absolutely. And you talked about community. What type of person best fits into the Field Lab community and would gain the most value from it?
Right. So we spent a lot of hours talking about this
Way too
because,
many.
yeah, how do you know where you fit? And
Mhm.
I think one thing I can definitely say is that I I've learned one thing, like I'm probably not for most people. This information is not for most people.
Right. Field Lab's not for everybody,
It is not
which we
for
kind of had to realize
right. It's
because it
not
was
for most people. I think Field Lab initially, I thought, oh, every CrossFitter will want to join Field Lab. And that was the intention. It probably was innately part of the failure,
Mm.
is that I didn't have a strong sense of who this was for, mostly because even back then, I didn't have any thinking around truly what a decentralized network looks like.
Mhm.
How I see it is this: most of our members, I think actually all of our members are, we've thought a lot about them now. Like, who are they?
Yeah, what's the common thread?
What's the common thread? And then there is a common thread. We realize that there is a common thread
Yeah, when
here.
you start to flesh it out,
Yeah,
kind of became
right. So
something
let's be a little
obvious.
clear here that the primary person that we're creating content for and who's attracted to Field Lab and what we're doing is someone who's health curious.
Mhm.
So there has to be an interest in learning about health. That's a core piece. There has to be either a loss of health, or a loss of health for someone else that you know. So either a personal loss of health
Mhm.
or somebody close to you in your network that is driving you to want to learn more about health. And of course, we're talking about true health here,
Mhm.
which we'll go into deeper, but is a biophysics based health, not a biochemistry based health, which then goes to the next point of our members have all done the biochemistry-based health-related things.
They've exhausted
They've all the things. They do the workouts. They do the healthy eating. They take the supplements. They do all the wellness trends. It's wellness, wellness, wellness. Like, they've been there, done that. They're searching. They're just sometimes desperate. And that is the core person. The other piece that I think we strongly vetted out is that you have to be someone who sees the future of yourself as being impacted by not having this health knowledge. That ultimately, you know deep within your core that you are missing something about health that is going to impact who you are, or this person who maybe has lost health near you in their future. And you see this as really a pressure point, that unless you learn about true health, you will not be able to obtain the future that you see for yourself.
And that's in contrast to somebody who's maybe more like present thinking or living kind of day to day.
Exactly, which is maybe our CrossFit person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like we realized like who we were really dealing with in the CrossFit space, we didn't really see eye to eye with, because they were very much thinking in the now.
Yeah, it was so surface level.
Yes, like
PR.
I hate to say that because we loved it so much. I only see that now, but no one is killing themselves in the gym for their 90-year-old self.
Which we oddly said was initially kind of the CrossFit message.
Right. So sadly,
but it got so far from it.
At the training to be a CrossFit coach, we were fed the original thinking around CrossFit. And because that's so in line with my thinking around like naturopathic medicine and root cause, it's like it's the rod of language, though.
It is 100%.
That I didn't understand really what that meant. Feels good.
I know,
It's the right language, but it actually didn't mean what it means to be now.
Right.
Or what it should mean. I don't know how to say that really, but ultimately, I know this strongly. We have lacked, conversion of members, because if you're someone who is happy with your current state of being, you're not anticipating that you're going to have any health issues into your future, you're okay with that. You might still be a health interested person.
Right.
You could still be really curious about your health. You love learning about health, but don't see that there's enough lacking that it could impact your future self or the future life or what you want for yourself and going forward. You're just not going to invest in Fieldlab, because we are about work.
Right.
We are about your personal requirement to interact with your own health. You have to participate in this learning. You have to do the work. This is not the easy route. And this is the route that unfortunately creates a challenge in most people's thinking, that you have to admit that there's something that you don't know, that you might be really smart. I mean,
our members are so smart.
Well, yes, and yes, we have really intelligent people, and I can say even for myself, I knew a lot of functional medicine, in the sense that I had never a spot in my schedule. There was no lack of patience, and there was a little, I mean, I say little now. I mean, back then I really sensed like, I am really helping these people to get better. Like there was a general positive trend, but even myself, I knew I was missing something. And then when I knew I was missing, I look back and think, wow, there's so much more that I can offer to people, but there's so much more to learn. That's really like, this is what I wish was created for myself. So even though I never actually lost my health or had someone that lost my health, I work only with
You
people
see it every
who
day.
lose their health.
Right.
So maybe it's the other person that this is for, is if you are a healthcare provider and you are confused as to why everything you were taught in school
Mhm.
isn't working to give people more health, this is our moment.
Mhm.
And it may be a small, slow, steady groundswell of real humans that are putting in the work, but proof of work networks are innately decentralized. And when you flow that way, you plug into what provides health for humans, which is the decentralized network of nature. And now there's a whole different opportunity for
Mhm.
health.
Absolutely.
So hopefully that was clear.
Yeah, I think
Did I miss
so.
anything?
I mean, you talked about the personal responsibility, and our members definitely want to put in the work and live the day that supports their health and the participation. So I think you hit a lot of the key points. And I think maybe I mean, just to think more about the personal responsibility, our members don't feel like there's any human being that's going to save them from a health perspective. They know that maybe they can't control their health, or they have to maybe get some guidance or some education, but they're willing to connect to nature and connect to that decentralized network, and it's their responsibility to do it. So I think that's also a good kind of distinguishing factor.
Right.
Yeah.
And that there is one more point, because you're making me think about this, is that they're accepting the personal responsibility,
Right.
but also recognizing that you can't be fully in control of your health.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you won't have it either.
Right.
So there's that
Doesn't work that
more
way.
global decentralization, that this isn't actually, and I think we've changed that languaging too. It's not about being the CEO of your health.
No.
It's actually being in flow with the unity of the source of information, which is nature,
Mhm.
and allowing that to stay connected with all the pieces and parts of you.
Mhm.
That is then you in connected in this decentralized network and in flow with it, and not being in 100% control. Because if you were in 100% control, that's the thinking around, I can take something, I can always do
Yeah, I
something,
can
I
take care
can
a little
I
bit.
can outsource my health, and I can pay for it. It will come back. And it's not to say there aren't parts of that centralized thinking that have to exist, because we wouldn't know decentralization if we didn't know centralization. But ultimately, it's that flow where you're always plugging back into the wholeness.
Yeah.
But that way, you realize you're just trying to create flexibility
Mhm.
in this connection to nature. It's such a distinguishing feature
Right.
of how powerful it is to be a human,
Mhm.
but a human that's connected to a network, because it doesn't work if you're doing this as a n equals one
No.
only.
Right.
Yeah.
And with a little wisdom, you can get there. You don't need more medicine or more
Right. Right.
centralized institutions or experts.
And wisdom, we see the value of the community, because
Yeah.
you can't see yourself outside of you can't see yourself
Need
within
some
yourself. Like, you
mirrors
need a
and some
mirror. Yes, you
reflections.
need the ability to have this flow. But one more point, and I think we've nailed it, is that the other distinguishing feature is that we're living in a time when we are so, as humans, in fear of dying.
Mm.
There's so much fear around dying. And it's definitely been a way of thinking that has been really solidified by our culture.
Mm.
And this has come up quite a bit for us very recently, that in our day to day practice, a lot of our patients struggle with making decisions because the things they take, the things they do, the food they eat. So maybe it's you have to go to the gym because you wouldn't be fit. You have to eat healthy because otherwise you'd be fat. You have to take that cholesterol lowering medication, otherwise you'd have high cholesterol. Like that thinking, that fear-based thinking,
Mhm.
because there's so much fear around dying, has unfortunately disconnected us with the very simple fact that we've lost the desire to live in health.
Crazy. Yeah. Like our pursuit of longevity made us afraid to live.
Right.
Some-
So I think that's the other distinguishing point, is that we are ultimately trying to create freedom from the fear of dying,
Yeah.
but freedom in the choice of living with health through confidence.
And have free will, which is what kind of defines the human experience.
Freedom, free will is human and is ultimately health that you never have to be afraid of losing.
100%.
Cool.
I think it's a cool place to end.
I think it's a great place to end.
Yeah.
So hopefully we will put this at the beginning of our podcast and have this be a reference for everyone to go back to, but also to share with friends.
And if people want to get into the Fieldlab community and kind of explore what that's like, where should they go?
Yes,
What should they do?
we will post it here as a link. Join us at Fieldlab. That's always a good place to start. We will keep our social media very limited, but probably my personal Instagram. I think we're going to play a little bit with trying to put stuff there, so that way there's a flow to our network.
Yeah, it'll always funnel back to that.
Absolutely.
Perfect.